She looked like every other tired passenger in seat 24C, holding a coffee cup and looking at her phone while flight attendants walked past without even noticing her. Nobody knew the woman in the old jacket had once landed a burning plane with no controls while enemy rockets flew past her. But when the brakes failed at 30,000 feet, the F-22 pilots would call the one name that could save everyone. Before you dive into this story, tell me, which country are you from? Comment below. Subscribe now because tomorrow I'm dropping the best story yet. You don't want to miss it. Elena Martinez pushed back in seat 24C and watched the morning clouds move past the window of Flight 447. She wore old jeans, a blue sweater, and white shoes that looked worn out. Her dark hair was tied back simple. No makeup. No fancy things. Nothing that would make people look at her twice. The flight attendant pushed the drink cart down the row and stopped next to her seat. Would you like something to drink? Just water, thanks, Elena said in a soft voice. The attendant gave her a plastic cup and moved on without really looking at her face. To everyone on this plane, Elena was nobody special. Just another person flying from Seattle to San Francisco on a Tuesday morning. Another face in a crowd of 270 passengers who all looked tired and busy with their own lives. The man in seat 24B was typing on his laptop very fast. Business person, Elena thought. Probably going to some meeting. He had not said one word to her since they took off 2 hours ago. The woman in 24A was sleeping with her head against the window, mouth open a little, making small breathing sounds. Elena liked it this way. She had been flying commercial for 18 months now, always picking middle seats or window seats in the back of planes where nobody paid attention. She dressed plain. Spoke quiet. Never made eye contact too long. Never told anyone what she used to do. Because what she used to do would make people stare. Would make them ask questions she did not want to answer anymore. Would make them treat her different, like she was some kind of hero or something, and she was tired of that weight on her shoulders. 3 years ago, her call sign had been spoken in every fighter squadron in the United States Air Force. Phoenix. They called her Phoenix because she had survived things that should have killed her. Because she had brought damaged aircraft home when other pilots would have ejected and let millions of dollars of machinery crash into mountains or oceans. Because she could land anything, anywhere, no matter how broken it was. She had been a test pilot at Edwards Air Force Base. Before that, combat missions over hostile territory where surface-to-air missiles turned the sky into a maze of death. She had flown F-15s, F-16s, and done experimental work on aircraft that did not have names yet, just project numbers that were classified above top secret. Her record was perfect. 42 emergency landings in her career. 42 times she had brought aircraft down safe when something went catastrophically wrong. Hydraulic failures. Engine fires. Flight control malfunctions. Computer systems going completely dead. She had landed through all of it. The worst one had been over the Nevada desert during a test flight. Total hydraulic failure at 40,000 feet in an experimental fighter that nobody else knew how to fly. The stick had gone dead in her hands. No control surfaces responding. The aircraft started falling like a rock with wings. Most pilots would have pulled the ejection handles. Standard procedure. Save yourself. Let the plane crash. But Elena had stayed with it. Had used engine thrust to control the aircraft, pushing throttles forward and back, making tiny adjustments, feeling the way the jet responded to raw engine power instead of flight controls. She had glided that dead aircraft down for 23 minutes, making calculations in her head, compensating for wind, for weight distribution, for the way damaged aircraft behave when they are barely flying at all. She had put it down on a dry lake bed at 210 miles per hour with no brakes, no drag chute, nothing to slow her down except friction and prayer. The aircraft had slid for 2 miles across the desert floor, throwing up clouds of dust that could be seen from space. When it finally stopped, she had climbed out without a scratch on her body. They gave her medals for that one. The Air Force Times ran her picture on the front page. Fighter pilots she had never met knew her call sign and told stories about her in bars and ready rooms across the world. That was when she realized she was tired. Tired of the attention. Tired of people expecting her to be perfect all the time. Tired of the pressure that came with being a legend. So she retired quietly. Took her pension and her memories and disappeared into normal life. Got a small apartment in Seattle. Started working as a consultant for aviation safety companies, boring desk work that paid well and let her use her knowledge without anyone knowing who she really was. She flew commercial now like everyone else. Nobody recognized her face without the flight suit and helmet. Nobody connected the quiet woman in jeans with the pilot whose name was still taught in emergency procedure classes at military flight schools. And that was exactly how she wanted it. The plane shook a little as it hit some turbulence. Elena barely noticed. She had felt turbulence that would make normal people scream. This was nothing. Just air moving around. The captain's voice came over the speakers, calm and professional. "Folks, we are starting our descent into San Francisco. Should have you on the ground in about 20 minutes. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing." Elena finished her water and put the cup in the seat pocket. She pulled her seat belt a little tighter. Old habit from military flying. Always secure before things get interesting. The businessman next to her closed his laptop and put it in his bag. The sleeping woman woke up and yawned, stretching her arms. Normal people doing normal things on a normal flight. Except this flight was about to become very not normal. Elena felt it before anyone else did. A small vibration through the floor of the aircraft. Not the usual vibration of engines or airflow. This was different. Wrong. A frequency that made her instincts wake up and pay attention. She had spent too many hours in cockpits to ignore that feeling. Something mechanical was not happy. The plane tilted forward slightly as it began descending. The captain was flying smooth, probably had the autopilot engaged, everything by the book. Elena watched the wing outside her window. The flaps extended with their normal whining sound. Landing gear should come down soon. She heard the landing gear deploy. 3 solid thunks as the wheels locked into position. That sounded normal. But that vibration was still there. Subtle. Most passengers would never notice it. But Elena noticed everything. Up in the cockpit, Captain David Morrison was running his pre-landing checklist with his first officer, Jessica Palmer. They had done this approach into San Francisco hundreds of times. It was a clear day, no weather issues, traffic was light. Easy landing. "Landing gear down and locked," Jessica said, checking the indicators. "Flaps 30, David said. "Flaps 30, confirmed." "Let me check the brake system," David said. He pressed the brake pedals gently, just testing the pressure. This was standard procedure. Always check your brakes before you need them. The pedals felt soft. Too soft. David pressed harder. The pedals went almost to the floor with no resistance. His stomach dropped. "I have no brake pressure." Jessica looked at her instruments. "Brake system hydraulic pressure is reading 0. That cannot be right." David pressed the pedals again. Nothing. It was like stepping on air. "I have no brakes. No brakes at all." Jessica's face went pale. "Check the backup system." David flipped switches, trying to activate the backup hydraulic system that should give them at least some brake pressure. Warning lights lit up red across the panel. "Backup system is not responding. We have total brake system failure." "How is that possible?" Jessica said. "That should not be possible. We have 3 separate hydraulic systems." "I do not know, but we have no way to stop this aircraft," David said. His voice was still calm, but his hands were shaking. "We are landing a 737 with no brakes." A Boeing 737 weighs over 140,000 pounds when loaded with passengers and fuel. It lands at about 150 miles per hour. Without brakes, it will not stop until it runs out of runway, crashes through barriers, and smashes into whatever is beyond the airport boundary. San Francisco International Airport's runways are built to handle normal landings. They have safety overrun areas. But those areas are not designed for an aircraft that cannot slow down at all. David keyed the radio. "San Francisco Tower, United 447 Heavy, we have an emergency. Total brake system failure. We cannot stop the aircraft after landing." There was a pause. Then the tower controller's voice came back, professional but tight. "United 447, say again?" "Tower, we have 0 brake pressure. No main system, no backup. We will be unable to stop on the runway. Request emergency equipment and instructions." Another pause. Longer this time. Elena could not hear the radio in the cabin, but she saw the flight attendants talking on their phones to the cockpit. She saw them look worried. She saw passengers starting to notice something was wrong. The man next to her looked up from his phone. "Why is everyone looking nervous?" Elena did not answer. She was listening to the engines, feeling the aircraft's movements, her mind already running through scenarios. No brakes on landing. Speed too high to abort. Runway length limited. Aircraft too heavy to stop with just reverse thrust and drag. This was very bad. In the cockpit, David was talking fast with air traffic control. "We need the longest runway available. We need all emergency equipment standing by. And we need options for stopping this aircraft. United 447, you are cleared for runway 28 right, that is our longest at 11,870 feet. Emergency equipment is being deployed. Stand by for additional instructions." Jessica was calculating numbers on her screen. Even with full reverse thrust and maximum drag, we are going to use at least 15,000 feet to stop. We are going 4,000 feet beyond the runway. What is beyond the runway? David asked. Jessica checked the airport diagram. Grass overrun area, then a service road, then San Francisco Bay. So we either crash through the barriers or end up in the water. Yes. David took a breath. He had been flying for 23 years. He had trained for emergencies. But never this. Training always assumed you had at least some brake capability. This was off the chart. We need help, he said. We need someone who knows how to land without brakes. The tower controller came back on. United 447, be advised we have contacted military assistance. They are reviewing your situation. Military assistance? Jessica said. What can the military do? I do not know, David said. But I will take any help I can get. 60 miles away, 2 F-22 Raptor stealth fighters were on routine patrol along the California coast. Major Scott Rodriguez and Captain Amy Foster were flying in formation, watching the ocean, monitoring their radios for anything interesting. They heard the emergency call from United 447. You catch that? Scott said over the secure radio to Amy. Yeah. Commercial with no brakes. That is a bad day. Tower is asking for military assistance. Want to see if we can help? Sure. Let me pull up the flight info. Amy worked her cockpit computer, accessing the real-time data link that connected all military aircraft. She typed in the flight number United 447 and waited for the passenger manifest to come up on her screen. The F-22's computer system could access almost any database if the situation was classified as an emergency. Passenger manifests were normally private, but in an emergency situation involving potential mass casualties, military pilots had clearance to review who was on board in case there were high-value targets or people with special skills who could help. Amy's screen filled with names. 270 passengers. She scrolled through, not sure what she was looking for. Then she saw a name that made her breath stop. Elena Martinez. Seat 24C. Scott, Amy said slowly. You are not going to believe who is on that plane. Who? Elena Martinez. There was silence. Then Scott said, Phoenix? That Elena Martinez. How many Elena Martinez test pilots do you know? Oh my God. Phoenix is on that flight. According to the manifest, yes. Scott's voice got excited. Tower, this is Raptor 01. We have critical information about United 447. You have a former Air Force test pilot on board that aircraft. Call sign Phoenix. She is the best emergency landing pilot in the world. You need to get her up to that cockpit right now. The tower controller sounded confused. Raptor 01, can you confirm? You are saying there is a military pilot on board the commercial flight. Affirmative. Elena Martinez, call sign Phoenix. She retired 3 years ago, but she holds the record for impossible landings. If anyone can talk that crew through landing with no brakes, it is her. In the cockpit of United 447, David and Jessica heard this over their radio. They looked at each other in shock. There is a test pilot in the cabin? Jessica said. David was already calling the senior flight attendant. Get me passenger Elena Martinez from seat 24C. Bring her to the cockpit immediately. Tell her the F-22 pilots called her call sign and we need her help. Back in the cabin, Elena was sitting very still. She had figured out something was seriously wrong. The flight attendants were moving through the cabin with forced smiles, checking seat belts, securing loose items. Emergency preparation. But they were trying not to scare anyone. The senior flight attendant, a woman named Patricia, came down the aisle walking fast. She stopped at row 24 and leaned down to Elena. Are you Elena Martinez? Patricia asked quietly. Elena's heart sank. Someone had found out. Yes. The captain needs you in the cockpit right now. He said to tell you the F-22 pilots called your call sign Phoenix. Every passenger within hearing distance turned to stare. The businessman next to Elena looked at her with his mouth open. Phoenix? Like the fighter pilot Phoenix. Elena closed her eyes. So much for staying hidden. Yes. She unbuckled and stood up. Patricia led her toward the front of the plane. Behind her, Elena could hear passengers whispering. Who is she? Did she say fighter pilot? What is happening? Patricia opened the cockpit door and Elena stepped inside. The door closed behind her. Captain Morrison turned in his seat. Elena Martinez? Call sign Phoenix. That was a long time ago, Elena said. The F-22 pilots say you are the best emergency landing specialist in the Air Force. We have total brake failure. Zero stopping capability. We need your help. Elena looked at the instrument panel. Years of training kicked in automatically. She saw the warning lights. Saw the hydraulic pressure readings at 0. Saw the altitude and speed. What happened to the brakes? She asked. We do not know. All 3 hydraulic systems failed at the same time. That should not even be possible. Elena thought fast. It is possible if you had a catastrophic failure in the hydraulic distribution manifold. If that component fails, it can dump all 3 systems at once. Very rare, but it can happen. Can we fix it? Not in the air. You are landing with no brakes. How much runway do you have? 11,870 feet. What is your landing speed? About 150 miles per hour, maybe a little less if we come in slow. Elena did calculations in her head. Weight of aircraft. Speed. Drag coefficient. Reverse thrust capability. No brakes at all. You cannot stop on that runway, she said. Even with perfect technique, you will go at least 3,000 feet past the end. We know. What do we do? Elena looked out the windscreen at the ground below. They were at 8,000 feet now, descending toward the airport. She could see the runways in the distance. Okay, she said. Here's what we are going to do. We are going to use every single technique we have to slow this aircraft down. It will not be enough to stop on the runway, but it will give us the best chance of surviving what comes after. I am listening, David said. First, you need to come in as slow as possible without stalling. Pull flaps to full. Extend landing gear early. Create as much drag as you can. That will slow you down before you even touch the runway. Okay. Second, the moment your wheels touch, deploy full reverse thrust on both engines. Not partial reverse. Full maximum reverse. I do not care if the engines overheat. We will only need them for a few minutes anyway. Got it? Third, use your rudder and nose wheel steering to keep the aircraft straight. Without brakes, the plane will want to pull in different directions. You have to fight that with every control you have. How do we stop after the runway? Jessica asked. Elena pointed out the windscreen. That grass overrun area past the runway. It is not designed for this, but grass and dirt create way more friction than concrete. When you hit the grass, the aircraft will slow down fast. Very rough ride, but it will work. What about the service road in the bay? David asked. We are not going to make it that far. The grass will stop you. Probably damage the landing gear, maybe rip off the bottom of the fuselage, but it will stop you before you reach the water. You have done this before? David asked. Not in a commercial aircraft. But yes, I have landed without brakes. Multiple times. Different circumstances but same basic physics. Elena looked at both pilots. You need to trust me. This is going to feel wrong. It is going to be scary. The aircraft is going to do things that feel like a crash. But if you follow my instructions exactly, everyone on this plane will walk away. David nodded slowly. Okay. What do you need from us? I need you to fly this approach exactly the way I tell you. No changes. No second guessing. When I say something, you do it immediately. Understood. And you need to tell the passengers to brace for emergency landing. This will be rough. People need to be in brace position when we hit that grass. David picked up the intercom. His voice went out to the entire cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. We have a situation with our landing equipment. We will be making an emergency landing at San Francisco. When I give the command, you will need to go into brace position. The flight attendants will show you how. Please listen carefully to their instructions. We have an expert helping us and we are going to get through this. Stay calm and follow instructions. In the cabin, passengers were scared now. Some were crying. Some were on phones calling families. The flight attendants moved through the rows, showing people how to brace, making sure everyone knew what to do. The businessman in 24B was white-faced. Is she really going to save us? He asked Patricia. If anyone can, she can, Patricia said, trying to sound confident. Up in the cockpit, Elena was talking to the F-22 pilots over the emergency frequency. Phoenix to Raptor 01, I need you to do something for me. Anything, Scott replied. I need you to fly escort on this approach. Stay visual on us. If something goes wrong during landing, I need you to report exactly what you see. Crash investigators will need that information. Copy that, Phoenix. We will be right beside you. Also, tell Tower to have emergency crews positioned along the entire length of the overrun area, not just at the runway threshold. We are going past the runway and into the grass. That is where we will need help. Will do. Elena turned back to the commercial pilots. Okay, here we go. Start your approach. Flaps to full. Jessica moved the flap lever. The flaps extended to maximum, creating huge amounts of drag. The aircraft slowed noticeably. Good, Elena said. Now extend landing gear. Landing gear is already down, David said. Lower it again. Cycle it. It will create more drag and make sure it is fully locked. David raised the landing gear and lowered it again. The gear thumped into position. Airspeed is 135 knots, Jessica called out. Perfect, Elena said. Hold that speed. Nice and slow. We want to touch down as slow as possible. The runway was getting closer. Elena could see the emergency vehicles lining both sides. Fire trucks. Ambulances. Dozens of them. Altitude 2,000 feet, David said. Stay on course. Keep it steady. The F-22 Raptors appeared on either side of the commercial aircraft, flying in close formation. Elena could see the pilots in their cockpits. Scott gave her a thumbs up through his canopy. She nodded back. Altitude 1,000 feet. Start reducing speed a little more. Get us down to 120 knots. David pulled back throttle carefully. The speed dropped. The aircraft was mushing through the air now, flying on the edge of its capability, barely staying airborne. Altitude 500 feet. Elena could see the runway threshold rushing up. Okay, this is it. When I say commit, you commit to landing. No go around. No second chances. We have one shot at this. Understood, David said. His hands were tight on the controls. Altitude 200 feet. Hold it steady. Altitude 100 feet. Commit now, Elena said. You are landing this aircraft. The wheels touched the runway with a screech. David immediately pulled the reverse thrust levers to maximum. The engines roared, pushing against the forward motion. The aircraft shook violently. Keep it straight. Elena shouted over the noise. Use the rudder. Do not let it pull. David was fighting the controls. Without brakes, the aircraft wanted to wander. He pushed the rudder pedals, using the nose wheel steering, keeping the jet pointed down the centerline of the runway. They were still going 100 miles per hour. The runway was disappearing under them fast. Full reverse. Keep it full. Elena commanded. Jessica had her hands on the reverse thrust levers, holding them at maximum. The engines were screaming. Warning lights were flashing everywhere. Elena watched the speed. 100 knots. 90 knots. 80 knots. End of runway in 5 seconds. David called out. Do not touch anything. Let it go. Elena said. The aircraft blasted past the end of the runway at 70 miles per hour. The wheels hit the grass overrun area. Instantly everything changed. The smooth concrete was gone. The wheels were rolling through grass and dirt. The friction was enormous. The aircraft started slowing down hard. Too hard. Everyone in the cockpit was thrown forward against their seat belts. In the cabin, passengers were screaming. The bouncing was violent. Bags fell from overhead bins. The noise was like being inside a giant drum. Elena braced herself against the center console. Keep the nose straight. Do not let it ground loop. David was wrestling with the controls. The aircraft wanted to spin. The grass was grabbing the wheels unevenly. He used every bit of strength to hold the nose wheel straight. The speed dropped fast. 60 knots. 50 knots. 40 knots. There was a huge bang as one of the main landing gear struts collapsed. The aircraft tilted to the left. Metal was scraping on dirt now, throwing up sparks. Stay with it. Elena yelled. 30 knots. 20 knots. 10 knots. The aircraft was shaking itself apart. Pieces of the fuselage were tearing off. Hydraulic fluid was spraying everywhere. 5 knots. Then finally the aircraft stopped. It was sitting tilted in the grass, nose pointing slightly left, one wing low, but it was stopped. For 3 seconds nobody in the cockpit moved. They just sat there breathing hard. Then Elena said quietly, "We are down. Everybody out." David grabbed the intercom. "Evacuate. Evacuate the aircraft." The flight attendants were already opening emergency exits. Slides deployed with loud pops. Passengers were scrambling out of their seats, pushing toward the exits, sliding down to the ground. Elena helped David and Jessica out of their seats. "Go. Get out. Make sure everyone evacuates." They ran back into the cabin. Elena followed. The cabin was chaos. People were crying, shoving, trying to get to the exits. But the flight attendants were doing their jobs, keeping people moving, preventing panic. Elena reached the emergency exit over the wing. She helped push people out onto the slide. elderly passengers, kids, a mother with a baby. Everyone moving as fast as they could. The emergency vehicles were racing across the grass toward them. Firefighters were jumping out with foam and extinguishers, spraying the engines in case of fire. One by one, the passengers evacuated. Patricia, the senior flight attendant, counted heads at each exit. Everyone out. Everyone out. Elena was the last person out of the aircraft. She stepped onto the wing and looked back into the empty cabin. Seats were broken. Luggage was everywhere. Oxygen masks dangled from the ceiling. But it was empty. Everyone had gotten out. She jumped down onto the grass and ran away from the aircraft. Behind her, the damaged Boeing 737 sat smoking in the morning sun, broken but not destroyed. All 270 passengers and crew were standing in the grass, some crying, some hugging each other, some just staring at the aircraft they had just escaped from. Elena walked through the crowd toward the emergency vehicles. A fire chief saw her and ran over. "You are the pilot who talked them down?" he asked. "I helped," Elena said. "You saved everyone." "That was incredible." Elena shook her head. "Captain Morrison saved everyone. He flew that approach perfectly. I just gave advice." Overhead, the two F-22 Raptors flew past in salute, wings tilted, then climbed away into the sky. Passengers were being loaded into ambulances for precautionary checks. News helicopters were arriving overhead. Airport officials were cordoning off the area. David found Elena in the crowd. "I do not know how to thank you. We would have died without your help." "You would have figured it out," Elena said. "No, we would not have. You knew exactly what to do." He held out his hand. "Thank you, Phoenix." Elena shook his hand. "Just Elena. Please." Phoenix was a long time ago. But people had heard the story. Passengers were coming up to her, crying, thanking her, asking if she was really a famous test pilot. The businessman from seat 24B had tears running down his face. "You were sitting right next to me the whole flight. I had no idea. You saved my life." Patricia hugged her tight. "You are amazing." "Thank you." Elena just nodded. She was tired. Her whole body was shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. A black SUV pulled up nearby. Two people in Air Force uniforms got out. A general and a colonel. They walked straight to Elena. "Major Martinez," the general said. He was older, gray-haired, with rows of medals on his chest. "I am General Patterson. We met once at Edwards 5 years ago." "I remember, sir," Elena said. "That was exceptional work today. We monitored everything from NORAD. You just saved 270 lives using skills that only a handful of people in the world possess." "I just did what needed to be done. You did what nobody else could have done." The general smiled. "The Air Force could use someone with your skills again. We have been trying to reach you for 18 months, but you made yourself pretty hard to find." Elena looked at him. "I retired, sir. I wanted a quiet life." "I understand. But consider this. You just proved that you cannot walk away from who you are. When people needed Phoenix, Phoenix showed up. That is not something you can retire from." Elena was quiet for a moment. She looked back at the damaged aircraft, at all the people standing around it who were alive because she had helped. People she did not know, would never see again. But they were alive. Maybe the general was right. Maybe you could not retire from being who you were. "I will think about it," Elena said finally. "That is all I ask." The general handed her a card. "Call me when you are ready. We have aircraft that need testing. Emergencies that need handling. And nobody does it better than Phoenix." He saluted her. Elena saluted back. Then the general and colonel got back in their SUV and drove away. Elena stood there in the grass, surrounded by the noise and chaos of emergency response, and for the first time in 18 months, she felt something she had not felt since she retired. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Scott and Amy landed their F-22s back at their base an hour later. In the debriefing room, their commander asked what happened. "Sir, we just watched a legend save 270 people," Scott said. "Phoenix talked a commercial crew through an impossible landing with zero brake capability. It was the most amazing piece of flying I have ever seen, and she was not even in the cockpit." "Think she will come back?" the commander asked. Amy smiled. "Sir, once you have flown like that, once you have saved lives like that, you do not stay retired. Phoenix will fly again. I guarantee it." And she was right. 3 months later, Elena Martinez returned to Edwards Air Force Base. She did not come back as a test pilot. She came back as the Director of Emergency Procedures Training, teaching the next generation of pilots how to handle the impossible. But everyone still called her Phoenix. because some call signs you earn forever. And sometimes, when commercial flights got into trouble, when situations looked hopeless, when pilots needed advice that only came from years of experience in the worst emergencies imaginable, they would call Edwards. They would ask for Phoenix. And Elena would be there, her voice calm and confident, walking them through step by step, saving lives from thousands of miles away. She never flew fighters again. She did not need to. She had found a different way to serve. A quieter way. A way that let her use everything she had learned to help people when they needed it most. But on clear days, when the F-22s would fly over Edwards on training missions, sometimes they would break formation for just a moment and dip their wings as they passed the tower where Elena worked. A salute to Phoenix. The pilot who could land anything, anywhere, anytime. The woman who stayed hidden until the moment the world needed her most. And then she answered the call.